Even with all the money and the top draft pick, the Chicago Bears free agency list might not be as long as people think. What are they going to have to do to get the excitement up around Chicago? We'll talk about all that and more on today's episode of the Windy City Breeze Sports Talk Daily. Let's go. Now, if you are new to the channel, please like the video. Please subscribe to the page. We do talk Chicago sports daily on this channel. It's the only channel talking Chicago sports, how Chicago talks. So make sure that you get in tune with us, man. So we might have a little bit of trouble this offseason if you're Ryan Poles, right? Because the Chicago Bears need a ton of pieces. But PFF does not believe that the Bears free agency list, at least for the top guys, will be that long. And it kind of makes sense, right? Because the Bears are a losing team. They're a 3-win team. Why would a ton of free agents want to come here? Is Justin Fields enough of a draw? There's still a ton of questions that are in place when it comes to this Bears team. But PFF only sends 2 of its top 50 players when it talks about its top 50 free agents to the Chicago Bears. And Daron Payne is not one of them. They actually have Daron Payne getting tagged. They do have us picking up Javon Hargraves from the Philadelphia Eagles if he does make it to free agency, which I think is a really good pickup. He's a guy that I really like. If Daron Payne is not available, I think he's a guy that causes havoc across the middle. I wouldn't mind having a Javon Hargrave here. The other one is Mike McGlinchey from the 49ers offensive tackle. And Mike McGlinchey has had a up and down season himself as well. So I think, right, the question here is, how do you make Chicago more appealing? Because if you feel like those are the only 2 guys that are going to want to come to Chicago that the Bears are going to be able to go out there and get, you have to do one of 2 things. One, you have to figure out a way to make Chicago more appealing. And I think that's the tough part coming into here, right? Like, yes, I would love to be able to go out and get Daron Payne. And I know money does that. And there's certain players on here that I'm willing to overpay for. You're going to overpay in free agency anyway. If Daron Payne does become available, you absolutely go out there and you overpay for Daron Payne. He's that level of player, right? But I think that when you look at kind of the pieces that are on the board, you don't want to just spend money because you have the money to spend. You want to spend the money wisely. You want to be able to go in here and make additions that are actually going to help this team in the long run. I don't know if Mike McGlinchey is a guy that I'm really overly excited about coming in here. I think that he does some good things, right? He's not a bad player, but I think he's a player you have to watch for sure. But does that address the needs that the Bears are looking for? And I think that you might be looking more into the draft than maybe we even thought if this is the case where we're sitting at in free agency here. Now, the one thing that they did also project was that the Bears would be able to come away with possibly a Bobby Okereke, again, on the defensive end, a guy that played in Matt Eberflus's system, a guy that already has adopted the hits principle, would be able to come in here and make plays right away, right? Wouldn't be mad at that. But I think the part of this is, right, like, are you getting impact players at every position that you're spending big time money for? That's the question that the Ryan Poles goes into this offseason asking, goes into this free agency, I should say, asking, and possibly could be the biggest struggle for this team here. Now, the other thing that the Bears need to do is make sure that list is long. Make sure that the guys that you're going to, because some guys are just going to say no, right? Like, I expect Ryan Poles to make his due diligence calls on a guy like Daron Payne. I expect him to make his due diligence calls on your top wide receivers. I would expect them to talk to possibly Jacoby Myers in that situation as well, right? As he's one of the top wide receivers out there, I guess, right now, right? Again, you know what I mean? Like, you need to add weapons, but is that the guy that you want to add? And for how much money do you really want to go add him for? He's a nice piece. He can play in the slot. He can play on the outside, got some good talent. But the other thing I think you need to do is, like I said, make sure that list is long. Who are the second and third guys that you think you can go out there and get that are just solid pieces? Because I think the one thing that Bears fans do need to understand, we can get a king's ransom for the draft pick. 100%. You want to build your team through the draft. You want to go out there and find those young pieces that are on cheaper contracts. That's the goal of the draft. Go out and find young pieces that are talented on cheaper contracts. But here's the thing. I need to find guys that are also going to be able to just fill positions, fill holes, and give me solid production, because that's what most of this team is. Most of your football team is made up of the glue guys, the other guys, right? As I say when I talk about the Bulls. So who are some of those other guys that you can go look at? I'm looking at a guy like Ashawn Robinson out from the Rams, right? Like, to me, he's a guy that just goes out there. He does his job. He does his job well. He's able to make plays. You probably could sign him for not that much, as he was a little bit banged up last season, only played 10 games last season, right? And he's been a little up and down health-wise over the last couple of years, right? But I think at the end of the day, the thing is you can go out there and you can pay that guy just to stand in there and fill a position. The Bears need to go out there and find guys like that, right, that are going to make an impact on the field, that you're going to hear their names on the field, but maybe that aren't the oh my god signing in the offseason. That's what most teams are made up of, man. So I think that free agency might be a little bit tougher, right? I think there's some players that you can go out there and absolutely just overpay for, but who are those guys? Is it a Deron Payne? For me, he's one of those guys, right? Is there an offensive lineman on the market that you go out there and absolutely overpay? Once Orlando Brown Jr. went off the market, I don't think that that's there either, right? Like, I think there's guys that you're going to give a nice penny to, but I'm talking about overpay. Like, you're sitting there and you're like, this guy could set the market, but we need him on our team to protect Justin Fields. I don't know if that guy's there either. So I think that the free agency is probably going to be a lot of calling, a lot of trying to get guys in, a lot of trying to get guys signed, probably not a lot of coming away with a ton of these guys. I probably feel a little bit like, I will say, I do feel like how PFF feels, right? I think there's guys you have to talk to. I think there's guys you have to do your due diligence with. But again, what does that mean for your team actually getting that guy under contract? Of course, you can do your due diligence all day. That doesn't mean that that guy's going to want to come here. And Ryan Poles had conversations with many guys last offseason, right? That we thought we were going to be able to get here, that seemed like they were leaning towards coming to Chicago. And then at the end of it, what? They went back to their old team, or they signed with a different team, or they made different moves, right? Like, and so to me, right, like, you're now in a situation where if guys aren't going to say yes, that's why I say you have to have that list long. If guys aren't going to say yes, or if you fear that guys aren't going to say yes, you have to be able to go out there and find the second guy, the third guy, the fourth guy, especially on this defensive line and offensive line, right? I've said many a times the Bears need to build this thing through the trenches, especially with you letting Angelo Blackson go. Not a huge loss, right? But I think that if you're going to start to see success with this team consistently, you need to have your trenches together. I think that Justin Fields is a game-changing piece. I 100% believe that. But if you allow him time in that pocket to actually go out there and play, I don't know if Lucas Patrick is going to be healthy enough to play an entire season. He wasn't this year. That's all I have to go off of, right? I don't know if you're going to go out there and get a Mike McGlinchey. If you are, hopefully he's able to stand in there as well. I don't know if Braxton Jones is our left tackle of the future. You don't know what you're going to find in the draft, but at a minimum, I think going into this free agency period, right, like, you need to fully have, you got to have your game plan extrapolated out to the 10th degree because of the situation you're in. You're a 3-win team. You're a 3-win team. I know, right? Like, there's a lot of the teams that are behind us that we look at and we're like, man, we could be better than them. We got a better quarterback than they do. You're still a 3-win team. You are what your record says you are. And yes, if you have better wide receivers, maybe you're better. Yes, if you hold on to Roquan Smith, maybe you're a couple of games better. But a couple of games is still a long way from being a good team, right? So I think that this is a free agency where, yes, you have the money. Yes, you have the opportunity. Go get some big name pieces. Go spend some money. I'm not saying don't spend the money, but make sure that you go out there and you're able to find the other guys. Make sure you're able to go out there and find the guys that are going to keep your team stable, that you look at and you be like, hey, not a Hall of Famer. Solid, though. Solid, right? And even the Bears' last defense, right? How many of the guys could we talk about on the team that were that, right? Like, that came in and you would just be like, hey, man, I love Akeem Hicks. I love Khalil Mack. Chris Tonga's got some game, right? Like, those are the guys that you actually are able to build your team around with. I love Roquan Smith, man. But you know what? There's some guys out there that are playing pretty well next to him. You know what I mean? And so I think that that's the thing that you also have to address this offseason. I feel like with the money that we have, with the timing we have, with the pick that we have, everybody's saying go big or go home. We got to go get the big name. We got to go get the guy that's gonna make the biggest splash of free agency. That's not the case all the time. Sometimes it is going to be a situation like this. I think this offseason could be a situation like this where you can go get some guys who are maybe the second tier guy or the 1B guy, right? Like Jonathan Hargraves to me is an excellent replacement if you're not able to go out there and get Deron Payne. He just is, man. He's a guy that's able to go out there. He's able to get to the quarterback. You saw him all through the playoffs wreaking havoc in the backfield, right? So guys like that, those are the guys that I'm looking at and saying, okay, how do they make an impact on the Chicago Bears team? Do they come in here and have that Akeem Hicks type of impact where Akeem Hicks, right? He was that kind of guy. Akeem Hicks was a guy when he hit the market that people were like, he's a guy I'd like to have on my team. I'm not going to overpay for him. But we got Akeem Hicks, and then we talk about him as, what was he, 2 or 3 times NFL's top 100 players in the NFL? You know what I mean? So that matters when you're able to go out there and find guys like that, those guys that are just able to continually wreak havoc, man. I do want to know how you guys feel, man. Let me know in the comments below. I will be down there talking with you as well. What do you think about, who are some of you guys, other guys, as I like to call them, right? The glue guys, the guys that hold the team together. Who are some of you guys' choices on that? Like I said, the one name that pops up for me is A'Shaun Robinson. He's a free agent this year. You can get him for a little bit less than market value, right? And he's able to just come out there and do a solid job for you. You're able to pair some vets with the young guys you already have here. Maybe they're able to learn from them a little bit as well. Let me know how you guys feel in the comments below. I'll be down there talking with you as well. As always, man, it's your boy Pat the Designer, back at it again to continue watching our Chicago Bears content or any of the content that we have on the channel, man. Click the links on the screen or check the links in the description below. Y'all stay safe out there, Chicago. Peace.